Howdy, everybody. How's it going on this smokeless, cool day? Kidding. Tons of smoke, and it's not cool. 100 degrees. It's fall, folks. Just thought I'd throw that out there. It's fall. When's there clouds and rain gonna come? Be patient. Today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite film genres. I should give you guys a test. Maybe I will. What is a genre? Can you name a genre? Can you? If you say horror, I will say that's correct. If you say Western, correct again. Musicals, that's a genre. If you say comedy, it needs to be more well defined. What kind of comedy is it? Satire, social satire, farce, those are genres. Rom-com, your favorite with Sandra Bullock falling down every minute. Isn't that sexy when a woman falls and just falls flat on her face in front of a really hot-looking guy? You know, one of those Ryan guys, somebody named Ryan. Those are genres. And the one I'm going to talk about today, my favorite genre, is called film noir. What do you think it is? What do you think it stands for? Does anybody know rudimentary French? You should. Because you're going to go to France one day and you need to say something cool to somebody. This would be a cool thing to say. Well, the word noir is black. Yes, folks, black. If you wanted to say the night is very noir, that would be pretty cool. But if you want to say your film is noir, what does it mean? What exactly does that mean? Black film? Don't get it. I know you guys are jonesing out there for color films, but you could do a film noir, a black film, in color. If you've ever seen or heard of Pulp Fiction, maybe you know what a film noir is. Film noir isn't just, it's the theme in the movies. It's the nightlife in the movies. What goes on at night? When everybody's safe at home sleeping, the people who occupy film noir are out prowling around. They're up to no good, usually. And most movies that follow the noir usually have our hero, who's a very flawed hero, usually somebody who's not as corrupt as everybody else, but he's kind of a bad boy. He likes to smoke cigarettes and drink and talk to interesting women at bars. He prowls the night because he's lonely. He doesn't have a family. These aren't married people, folks, living in nice houses with little fences outside and little doggies. No, these are men that are lonely and cut off from the society we live in. There usually is a theme that happens in these, usually a crime, not committed by our hero, but he's going to solve it. He could be a private detective. That's common. Or it could just be a regular guy, musician. It could be anything. But something is afoot, and he's going to find out some way or another. So he has to go into a world, a noir world, a night world, a shady world of shady characters doing things in the dark where we can't see. Then there's a bad guy who was what they call the antagonist, because he antagonizes the whole shebang. And he is out there doing no good. Sometimes it's a gangster. Sometimes it's a powerful business person. You know how they are. They're always up to no good at night when we're sleeping safely. But whatever it is, the protagonist, which is our hero, except for he's not really a hero. To define the film noir hero is to call him an anti-hero. What do you say is that? Well, he is heroic, but he's flawed. Lots of character flaws. So he's not Superman. He's more like Batman. And if you know Batman, that's a noir. Batman is a very flawed character. I'm talking about the original one or two that Tim Burton directed, not these new ones. Look at that as a pretty good example of modern noir. It takes place at night. Everybody's flawed, lots of corruption going on. And Batman, who's flawed also, thank God he's a billionaire, is out trying to stop the bad guy. And what is always there in between Batman and the Joker? Think about it. A woman. Yes. A femme fatale. Another fancy word. Another fancy French word. The fatal woman. That's usually in all noirs. Postman Rings Twice. Double Indemnity. So many of them. Sunset Boulevard. There's a femme fatale. And what the femme fatale uses is her sexuality to these simple, easy men. She could get what she needs out of them by alluring them to her night light duties of promised sexuality. Now, this is coming after World War II. And things have changed, folks. The world is different. We went through a war, and we came out the other side changed. We no longer can look at Hollywood as simply an entertainment. Everybody's happy. Everybody's finds the person they love, and they end up in the right place, the right time, the right job, the right girl, the right guy, and then they dance off into the sunset. Well, film noir didn't want any of that. The World War II vets that came out of the war had other stories they needed to tell. And the stories they needed to tell fitted film noir. It was an exciting time in American films, very much influenced by the Italian neorealism that I asked you guys to look at on Monday. Very influenced by that. It's not supposed to be fancy. It's not supposed to be pretty. And it's supposed to be a little bit amoral. Everybody's morals is in question. Who's the good guy? He's okay, but he's flawed. Who's the bad guy? He's bad, but he could be good too for a few minutes. He's flawed. The femme fatale, what is it she wants? Just money? Is that all she's about? Sometimes it's more deeper than that. Sometimes it's revenge, most foul. How do you get the femme fatale to seduce our anti-hero into possibly murdering her husband? Double indemnity. Postman Rings Twice. It's a very common theme. She seduces a man who was flawed, and she convinces him that she loves him and she will be with him. The only obstacle is her rich husband. What are we going to do? And so they plot to kill him, to make it look like an accident. And guess what? She's the prize, and his money. Well, she'll inherit it once he's dead. It's a recipe for disaster, folks. It's not going to end well, and it doesn't end well. Because in film noir, the people who need to be punished are punished. The people who escape punishment go away more lost and alone than ever before. They're going to spend a lot of lonely nights in bars trying to wash their sins away. They say the earliest film noir possibly was maybe Double Indemnity, maybe 1942, but it was before the term was coined. Some people say, in a way, Citizen Kane is film noir. It's a mystery. It's got a flawed anti-hero. It's got a bad guy, a couple of them. The crooked politician, maybe he wrote about it. Hopefully he did. It's got the femme fatale who can't sing, the opera singer. He'll do anything for her. Why? Well, his Achilles heel, his one flaw, is he'll do anything for her. And he fails. And what's he left with? Nothing. He's left alone. And noir is just not just about those types of themes in the script, but it's also about the photography, which is usually glorious black and white. And if it's at night, then we don't see light. And we have slashes of light coming through the one light that lights a small part of the room. They're in and out of the shadows, even in their own room. That is typical film noir photography. And there's some brilliant films out there that made the rules. A lot of it was because they were considered low-budget movies. Many, many, many film noirs weren't what they would call the A movie. In your book, there is some explanation what an A movie is, a B movie is, but I think I've mentioned it before, but for many, many years, many decades, Hollywood, you'd go to the movies and you would see a cartoon, you'd see a newsreel, because we don't have nightly news in those days, folks. They had radio and the newspaper. So they had newsreels that would bring us news of the world. They're usually a week late because you got to send the film back. You got to have it developed and edited before it goes into the newsreels, into the movie theaters. So usually watching a newsreel that's a week old, that's how we kept up on what was going on in the war. Another way to get your news was the radio. That's up-to-date news. And people's ears were glued to the radio. It's before we had television. Then we get television, and radio is given the boot for the most part. Then after those two things, you see the B movie, which is usually a low-budget Western or horror movie, monster movie, or a detective movie, or a film noir. They're usually filmed very little money in a very short time frame. If a film noir movie shot for 2 weeks, that's considered a long shoot. Most movies in the old days took a month to 6 weeks. Film noir would shoot a movie sometimes in 5-6 days. Think about that. So you've got to get really realistic with what you could do. You can't have a bunch of fancy camera work. You can't have fancy lighting. You can't have fancy anything. You don't have time for fancy. So film noir developed its own look because of the budget reasons. Now, other movies that had some A-list stars like Alan Ladd and Humphrey Bogart had bigger budgets because of their paychecks. But with film noir, the directors, the writers, the cinematographers, that's our camera people who control what's the camera sees and the lighting, they had to get really creative. So it's a really wonderfully creative way to make a movie that has some substance. They're not comedies, folks. They're going to be pretty grim because people are going to get their just desserts, and a lot of times the woman does too. The femme fatale doesn't get off scotch-free because she's a woman. In Double Indemnity, Fred McMurray shoots her right in the guts. That's right, he murders her. Happened over and over where the women get their just desserts. You said, what? I should make you guys watch this film called Gun Crazy. She's gun crazy. The woman's gun crazy, not the guy. They rob banks and she murders everybody. Quentin Tarantino wouldn't be anywhere without that movie Gun Crazy. Now, she's not going to get out alive. She has to die. Out of the past with Jane Greer and Robert Mitchum, she's the femme fatale of all femme fatales. He cannot help but follow her into his fate. She's going to get him killed, and he knows it. But she's so alluring, he can't stop himself. The sirens of the seas. Maybe you've heard that term. Where the sirens of the seas would, in ancient Greece, they would sing their song, and the men would be mesmerized, and they'd run their boats up onto the rocky shores and die. The sirens of the seas could not be trusted. They're usually beautiful serpent-like women who were only on the edges of our reality. The femme fatale always, usually, has to be punished, along with the man. And Maltese Falcon, Humphrey Bogart, she gets her friend murdered. His friend, she's responsible. She's not going to get off. He loves her. She loves him. He could have her if he just keeps his mouth shut. But there's a great scene in it when he says, "No, you're going down. You're going to take the fall." Because in the end of the day, our hero, our anti-hero, has to be the ethical, moral of the movie. He makes the stand for all of us. Or we just would have a rotten movie with a bunch of rotten characters that we don't care if they live or die. She's going down, folks, maybe to the gas chamber. But he promises to come visit her if she ever gets out of prison. A good guy. And he loves her. That's a woman he loves. Film noirs, another great one, Detour. A guy, musician, is hitchhiking. And he's picked up by somebody. And during their drive, this guy dies of a heart attack. So what our hero, our anti-noir hero, does, he takes his identity. He steals his car, he steals his money and his wallet, and now he's going to replace his identity with that dead man. Now, he didn't kill the guy, but he hid his body, and he didn't report it to the police. So then he sees a nice-looking woman out there in the Mojave Desert, and she's hitchhiking. She's got a nice dress on. This is how they dressed in those days. People dressed up, even when they traveled. Even when they're hitchhiking, they have suits and ties on. And the women are looking pretty good, so he picks her up thinking, nice-looking woman. I have no choice. I'm a guy. All right, the trap has been set already. She's a femme fatale, and he doesn't even know it yet. Well, when she gets in the car, she looks at the car, looks at him, looks at his clothes, asks his name. And guess what, folks? She knows whose car it is. She knows who the real guy was because he had picked her up earlier. And she goes, "Are you kidding? I know who you are. You're the guy who got rid of him. You stole his car and everything, and I'm going to turn you in unless you do what I want." Now he's snagged through blackmail. The femme fatale is going to weave her web around him. Like the female black spider. You know about those, don't you? They're very seductive. Have you ever seen a male black widow? Do you even know what one looks like? They don't look like the female. They look like ordinary house spiders. And you know why you don't see them very much or can recognize them? Because they're usually dead after they mate. The black widow spider eats his head off as soon as he's mated with her. Think about that, guys and girls. Mating is pretty dangerous in the insect world. This femme fatale gets these guys in, and she will eat their heads off eventually. But in noir movies, she's going to pay her price too, and a Detour she does. She gets her comeuppance. She has to be punished for her evil sins. So the French came up with this term when they describing our movies to us. The French during this time were writing incredible critical essays about American films. in a magazine called Cahiers de Cinema, and they were taking our cinema very seriously. In fact, they resurrected Orson Welles' Citizen Kane through their writing. When Citizen Kane came out, it did not make a lot of money. Of course, it was right in the middle of World War II. It was kind of like forgotten about. And in the French in the 50s started writing about it, and then people started reading the stuff and going to cinemas. There were art cinemas where they're showing foreign films and art films. These weren't the cinemas that were used to at the mall, folks. And also during this time, there were starting to be film schools. Out of World War II, people were starting to study cinema in colleges. Never happened before. And they start showing these movies. Citizen Kane, Gun Crazy, film noir movies, and they became very popular with the in crowd and the smart people and called cinephiles. It's not a bad word, folks. Pedophile, we know what that is, right? Hopefully, you know what it is. Cinephile is somebody who is obsessive and loves cinema. I would consider myself definitely a cinephile, and I'm definitely not a pedophile. You know what that is, folks, right? Do I have to explain it to you? It created a whole new generation of would-be feature directors like George Lucas, who directed Star Wars, and Francis Ford Coppola, and Martin Scorsese, who did The Godfathers and Raging Bull and Taxi Driver. These guys were coming up in the 50s and the early 60s, and they're watching all these film noir movies. And they're looking at Citizen Kane as something other than just a Hollywood entertainment. They looked on a deeper level. And the French brought that to us, folks. Like the blues music. I was talking to my other class, which I'm teaching music. The blues, which we invented, was given back to us by the British invasion that came over here, the Rolling Stones, the Yardbirds, the Animals, Led Zeppelin. That's all blues-based rock and roll. And we thought, oh, this is groovy. But they go, hold on. We're just copying your guys. People, we didn't know it. Because our guys, Black Americans, didn't get played on the radio here unless you lived in the South where Elvis lived and Jerry Lee Lewis. Little Richard wasn't being played on the radio, or Chuck Berry, Alan Wolf. Chuck Berry wouldn't really be considered a blue artist. He did get played, rock and roll. Everybody thought he was white. Everybody thought Elvis was black, folks, because it was radio. This is long before social networking. And Elvis sounded kind of black. His music was definitely black, influenced, and so when he showed up, they're going, who are you? I'm Elvis. Enough said. So the film noir, the French critics gave an intellectual, academic relevance to so many of our films that we didn't even see ourselves until they gave it back to us. And they defined an entire generation, I would say, for fact. And they had terms like film noir and femme fatale, and these are all French terms. Mise en scene, so many others. I'll have to Google them to figure out the words again. We still use them to this day describing films. And they're French. Why aren't we using American terms? Well, French is more romantic. Their language is a little more romantic. Anyway, so film noir. I'm going to post a couple of documentaries for you to watch. You know where to go on Canvas. I'll post them. I'll post this lecture on there. I'm not in the mood right yet to sign another paper. I may do that at the end of this week. It's Wednesday. Next week is October, folks. no rain in sight, so that means we're going to be stuck with the smoke for quite a while. Anyway, I hope you guys are staying safe. Hope you're watching movies and enjoying it and getting something out of this class. Embrace black and white, folks. Embrace it. Because like Orson Welles said, it's the truth. And on that notice, we will watch some color movies. Believe it or not, we're getting there. Anyway, I'll see you when I see you. And keep up the good work.